Welcome, everyone, to Phillies Extra, the baseball show from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm your host, Scott Lauber. So, spring training is over. It's opening day week. The Phillies begin the season with 3 games against the Nationals in Washington. Then they'll come home to open Citizens Bank Park on Monday afternoon against the Rockies, and off we go from there with another baseball season. To get us ready for it all, I'm excited to be joined this week by Phillies second baseman Bryson Stott. We're going to get right into our interview here in a moment. But first, I think most fans know Stott's story by now. He grew up in Las Vegas and was about 4 years old when he met Bryce Harper, who was 9 or 10 by that time. Their families are friends. Stott's mom coached Harper's sister in cheerleading, so they grew up around one another. And when Bryson agreed to come on the show, I started thinking about his journey to the big leagues and something that Harper said in the spring of 2021, or maybe it was 22, the years blend together. Anyway, Stott was in Major League camp for the first time, and he had a chance to make the team. And being that Harper knew him better than anyone, he was asked if there was a player that Stott reminded him of. And Harper thought for a second, and he came up with Brandon Crawford, the longtime shortstop for the San Francisco Giants. It turns out Harper's a pretty good scout, because a few years later, you can definitely see some similarities. Crawford batted left-handed, just like Stott. He won 4 Gold Gloves. Stott was a Gold Glove finalist at second base the last 2 years. Crawford was also a key figure on a couple of Giants World Series winners. Stott has been a winning player for 3 Phillies playoff teams. But I dug a little deeper, and I found something really interesting. Crawford made his Major League debut when he was 24, and through his first 3 seasons, he batted .241 with a .650 OPS and 5.1 wins above replacement. Stott broke into the majors at the same age, 24, and through 3 seasons, here are his numbers: .256, .695 OPS, 8 wins above replacement. Pretty similar, right? Well, it turns out that Crawford was only scratching the surface of the player that he would become. Over the next 3 years, from his age 27 to 29 seasons, he batted .260 with a .757 OPS, which made him 8% more productive than league average. He won 2 Gold Gloves, won a Silver Slugger, and made an All-Star appearance. Now, if Stott's career follows a similar arc over the next 3 years, the Phillies will be thrilled, because as one of the younger players in the everyday lineup, he's kind of a supporting cast member to the core of Harper and Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. But as that core ages, the Phillies face some decisions whether to keep Realmuto and Schwarber beyond this year, and they're going to need Stott and Brandon Marsh in particular to take on more prominent roles. I brought that topic up with Stott and more in our conversation. And if you stick with us after the interview, I'll be joined by my colleague Lachlan March to talk about a bunch of other Phillies-related topics as the season gets underway. So without further ado, here's my sit-down with Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for hopping on and doing this.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
So you're entering your 4th Major League season, which, I don't know how you feel about it, but it's kind of hard for me to believe. Like, it feels like yesterday that Phillies were breaking camp, and I was talking to your mom on the phone about you being on your first opening day roster. And you've been part of this group with Brandon Marsh, with Alec Boehm, that has kind of become known as the Phillies daycare. And now in year 4 for you, I sort of wonder, I'd like to start with this. I sort of wonder whether at age 27 with a baby girl who, I don't know, is probably actually in daycare, whether you still embrace that identity of the daycare and kind of being sort of the quote unquote younger guys on the roster.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of just always going to be there. I think a lot of people think it's like, oh, they're 26, 27, 28-year-olds. And it was less about our age as it was our service time at the time of when it started. Just looking around, we have 10-year guys all over the place and 5 guys that are going to hit 10 years in the next year and a half, 2 years. So it was less about our actual age than it was our service time. So we were always on the rookie duties, carrying the speakers and things like that, what we're supposed to do. And it was less of, oh, you're 24 years old, you're going to be called a daycare member. It was more, you have one day in the big leagues. Marsh, you have a year maybe. And it was more about the service time. And I think a lot of people are like, they're not in the daycare, they're 28 and things like that. So we just think it's funny, and we joke. We're like, we could play 7 years in a row and we're still on the road in spring training because you guys are going to have 15 years and things like that. So I think it's always going to stick around and just be a little joke that the veterans have for us and things like that. But yeah, being able to do it with those two has been awesome. And I came up with Bohm in a sense, and then we got Marsh in 22, and he kind of joined forces with us. So that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, lucky for you guys, right? You play on a team that the core of the team hasn't changed in 3 going on 4 years. So you really don't grow out of that daycare, I guess, with this group. You need to get Aiden Miller in there, and you need to get, Justin Crawford in there, and you can pass the daycare onto them, I guess, at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll be obviously in spring. It kind of goes seniority wise on who goes on the road and right. Things like that. And we're like, oh, we'll see you guys in Fort Myers because no one else is going over there. So, yeah, I mean, it's fun and getting to go and see the other stadiums. I kind of like going on the road and in spring just to kind of see. I mean, this is my first. I mean, outside of my first spring training, I've never been to Florida. So, I've only been to Clearwater pretty much, and just seeing the different parts of Florida is cool to me. So I have no complaints, but obviously you're not going to send Bryce and Nick and JT and all those guys. So yeah, that's where our joke of we could play 6-7 more years and we're still a little behind. So
yeah, you're not kidding either. Like, I was home for a few days and I got back to Florida for the back-to-back Fort Myers games, not knowing who was on the travel roster, but I guessed it pretty well. I mean, I got down there, first game against the Twins. It's you, it's Bohm, it's Marsh, it was all the guys who I know who travel on the road. So you've gotten to see a lot of Florida by just being a member of this young, newer Phillies group. Along those lines, I was having a conversation at the start of camp with Kevin Long, and he said something I found really interesting. He said that, like, his challenge to you and to Marsh is to, and I'm kind of quoting him directly now, think of it more like you're the superstar on the team, he said. Because his feeling is that if you played for 25 or so other teams in the league, you'd probably be leading off or batting third. And here, you have got Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner to handle the leadoff thing, and Bryce, to bat second or third. And so you end up batting a little lower in the order. But he said, I also want to make sure that they don't feel like they're passengers on the train. And I wonder if that's a message that he's conveyed to you, and a mindset that you've adopted, going into this year, and maybe you already had it, that, like, hey, I'm a big part of this, and we're not just here to kind of watch Bryce and Schwarber and Turner do their thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to have kind of that mindset. I mean, my mindset is I think I could hit first on this team. So I feel Marsh probably the same way. And I mean, I feel like if you don't have that mindset, we're in the wrong business. And yeah, I mean, obviously we know our place on the team, and we know that, I mean, at least for me, I don't know if I could speak for Marsh, but I know that if I'm going well and things like that, it takes a lot of pressure off those guys who think they have to carry the load and do things like that, and try to do more than they need to do. And that's why the batting order's nine people. So yeah, our lineup is deep, and there's guys in there that could hit anywhere in the order and things like that. So I think just if we're all doing what we're capable of doing, you just have free and easy Schwarber, you have free and easy Trey and Bryce, and they're not trying to do more than they need to do. And what they just roll out of bed and do is plenty good. As you can see, they're all stars and things like that. So I think that we're also a big part of the lineup, and obviously it helps them when we're going well, and that's why we want to do well is to take some pressure off those guys and let them know that they don't have to drive in 400 runs and things like that. So
What you and I have talked about this a lot. It feels like over the course of the last few years. What do you view as kind of your identity as a hitter? Because you were such a good two-strike hitter in 2023, but that's a hard way to live. There's a reason why most guys hit under 200 with two strikes. I know last year you tried being a little more aggressive, maybe early in the count. It worked for you at times it didn't. And I don't know if you felt like it, but it certainly looked a little bit like maybe there were times where you were stuck between approaches a little bit. How do you view your identity as a hitter at the plate?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of a person who is going to be annoying to the pitchers and try to stay in the strike zone as much as I can. And if I do chase, it's not a pitch that I want to put in play. I just kind of want to foul it off. I mean, in hindsight, you're like, I should have taken that and I would have had a ball, but hitting is so hard and you're not going to be locked in the strike zone every single day. And sometimes you do chase. I mean, the best players in the world chase. So just as long as you're not putting them in play, I think that's where I ran into some issues last year is those balls that I would foul off in 22 and in 23, I was putting them in play and things like that. So, yeah, just kind of being annoying to the pitcher and I want them, when they see me going up to the plate, they know it's not going to be an easy at bat. And even if I end up getting out, I want to put 5, 6, 7, 8 pitches on the pitcher and help the guy behind me and give our pitchers a break. And yeah, I mean, I use the whole field and hit line drives, and I mean, I'll hit my homers to right, but not going up there just trying to yank every ball over the fence and being that kind of annoying person in the lineup. So,
okay, got to ask you about the walk-up music. A-OK. When the crowd sings along to it, which happens all the time at Citizens Bank Park, it kind of reminds me of when Shane Victorino was here and he used, Three Little Birds, Bob Marley, and everybody sang the chorus with him. Why did you pick it? And I guess now you've got to stick with it, right? Because it's sort of become your thing. You had Mike Hazen, the Diamondbacks GM, say a few years ago that it was the best walk-up music in baseball. So how did it come about? And, I guess you got to, like I said, you got to stay with it now.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it. So, yeah, I mean, I like the song and I never thought it would turn into this and kind of be a part of the Philadelphia experience and kind of just rolling with me. And yeah, I just like the song and then did a couple of cool things and then it kind of stuck and crowd sings it and things like that. So, yeah, I definitely can't change it, but I don't want to change it either.
So you've been a Gold Glove finalist now a couple of years in a row, and I was talking to Bryce the other day about his chances of winning the Gold Glove at first base, given all the work that you put in with Bobby Dickerson and Larry Boa in spring training and all season long. What would it mean to you to be recognized as a Gold Glove second baseman, and how cool would it be if you and Bryce end up both winning it on the same side of the infield?
Yeah, I think it's I would say a goal, but it's not the goal. I think that obviously the World Series is the goal and to win games and the personal stuff take care of itself. But I care about our pitcher a lot and just being a finalist and being in that conversation is awesome. And that means I'm doing my best to help our pitchers and get them out of innings with diving plays or things like that. And saving runs is always fun. And yeah, I just, like I said, I care about them a lot and I care about them when I'm hitting. So I don't really swing early in the count. I don't want a quick inning and rush them back out there. And when I'm out there behind them, I'm trying to catch every ball and make every play and not put any more stress on them since, I mean, they are the reason we go. And yeah, it's been pretty awesome.
You guys have won more games every year for 3 seasons, 87 wins, 90 wins, 95 wins. You won the division last year, which for me is still the most difficult team accomplishment in the sport because there are more paths to the playoffs than ever before, though. I wonder if it's diminished at all. I don't think it is. But, one of the things people have been asking this spring is like, how do you make sense of that? How do you make sense of better regular seasons? You could say that the team's been better for 3 years in a row, but you've backslid one round each year in the playoffs. How do you make sense of that? And does that reinforce that, like in October, I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, but like anything can happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. It is a crapshoot, and it's whoever's playing the best at the time. And I mean, in the regular season, we have gone up in wins and things like that. And I think our main goal is just to play all 162 and be the hottest team going into the playoffs. And we want to win the division, and we want to play good all season long from the first pitch to the last. And yeah, I think that's more of the message kind of this spring is we need to play every single game and not matter who's in the other dugout, and don't look past anybody and things like that. And yeah, we didn't play well, and we got beat last year. And it's, from my feeling, it's less about talking about it and actually doing it now. So everyone's goal is still the same, and we all know what it is, and it's just time to go do it now. So.
Okay, let me get you out on this really quick. You went to UNLV. You proudly wore a UNLV helmet in the clubhouse last year after the celebration. But I know you're an Ohio State football fan too, right? You used to watch a lot of Ohio State with Bryce. What's it like to watch a college football game with Bryce, number one? And number two, did you go to the national championship game?
That was, I think, the second playoff game of Ohio State I've missed since the start of it. We were here and we got to Florida early, so it just wasn't going to work. But no, it's fun, and I'm kind of I think the Philadelphia living is coming out in me now, watching those games. And no, I'm the one yelling at the TV, and he's like, "Oh, just be quiet. They're going to be fine." And it's fun, and I love it. And I'm a huge football fan, and just watching them is awesome. And they had a great year, and should be pretty good this year too. And he's just funny. He's always yelling at me, and I'm like, why don't you yell at the TV and not me? I'm just sitting here. I have no effect on this game. So yeah, it's fun, and we like to do it. So.
Bryson, I know how busy your schedule gets in spring training, especially here in the last few days when everyone's just racing to get out of Florida and head north. So I want to thank you for sharing a few minutes of your time here with us on Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and we will see you on Thursday in Washington.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. We want to thank Bryson Stott again for being with us this week. Now for our Reporter's Notebook segment, I'd like to welcome in Lachlan March. And Lachlan, I think congratulations are in order. For the first time, I can officially introduce you as Phillies beat writer and welcome you into the club of baseball writers.
Yes, I'm very excited to join that club, and I'm also excited to be back on the show. Thank you for having me.
There's a secret handshake. We can go through that later, but I'd like to congratulate you also on surviving your first spring training. You made it, like a couple of months of trekking around the state of Florida. You got to the end of the finish line. How many times did you do the Clearwater to Lakeland shuttle this year?
3 times, I think, that was plenty for me. But yeah, I got to see lots of different parts of Florida. So that was a bonus, I would say. And I'm just happy to be on the other side of it.
You and Bryson Stott, Road Warriors. I'd say that you're an expert now on Tampa area traffic patterns. So that's a good thing. Let's get to a couple of topics that dominated the final days of camp and I think are going to continue to be in the news cycle here for a little while. And first up is Ranger Suarez. He's starting the season on the injured list with a stiff back. And it's hard to get kind of an accurate read on the situation because Ranger sort of epitomizes that whole Mad Magazine, what me worry thing. Anyone under 40 has no idea what I'm talking about. But he did tell us the other day that this isn't as bad as the back problem that caused him to miss a month last year after the All-Star break. But still, it bears watching, don't you think?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Ranger is a very nonchalant kind of guy. And he did say it's not as severe as what sidelined him for a month last year. But at the same time, he did say it's the same part of his back. And I think that is definitely something to just keep an eye on. And I think the Phillies are probably going to take it a bit slow out of an abundance of caution, knowing that it's the same part. It may not be the same injury, but we've seen this before and we don't want it to be as long as it was last year.
Yeah, I think this is why you keep Taijuan Walker around, right? Like, it's why you paid $4 million for a swingman like Joe Ross. It's why you want to make sure that you get Andrew Painter so that he's available to you for the entire second half of the season, because pitching depth is so essential. I mean, injuries are inevitable. The Phillies do a pretty good job and have for the last few years of keeping their starters healthy, but injuries come up. And I agree. I think the Phillies aren't going to take any chances with Suarez. They'll make sure that he doesn't pitch before he's good and ready. So if that means a few starts in AAA, that's what they'll do. And we know he's going to miss at least one start. He'll probably miss 2 or 3 based on what Dave Dombrowski said the other day. And it's also a big year for Suarez. He can be a free agent after the season, and there's a big payday waiting for him if he has a good year. So let's play over-under. If I set the line at May 1st, are you going over or under for when we see him on the mound in a game for the Phillies?
Yeah, well, Dave Dombrowski said if all goes well, he thinks mid-April, but I'm gonna say May, after May 1st, because I think really just there's no reason to rush it. Like you said, the Phillies are starting the season with a ton of starting depth, and you want to have Ranger healthy when it matters. So I think they're going to take their time.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Okay, let's move on to the other major topic of conversation, the batting order, because it doesn't matter what year it is. People are always fixated on the batting order. I remember back in the day, the questions about like what's the optimal lineup with Chase Utley in it and Ryan Howard in it. And so this year, it was an otherwise quiet camp for the Phillies, but there was this raging debate, and I think it was going on internally too, about whether Kyle Schwarber or Trey Turner should lead off. And after 6 weeks of camp, it sounds like Rob Thompson's going to do what he initially said he wouldn't when I asked him at the beginning of spring training. One lineup against righties with Schwarber at the top, and another lineup against lefties with Turner at the top, at least until he comes to a decision. So let me start by asking you to put on your manager's hat. Who should bat lead off and why?
Yeah, I'm like Bryce Harper said at the beginning of camp, I'm glad I'm not the manager, and I'm glad this is not my call. But personally, obviously, I know Schwarber has had a ton of success in the leadoff spot, but I want to see what Trey Turner can do, and I want to see what batting in the leadoff spot can do for Trey Turner as well. So I'm in the camp of start him in leadoff, at least to start, see how it goes. That's what I would do.
Yeah, and I think that's the internal kind of push and pull that's going on, is that, on one hand, I think a lot of people think that maybe batting leadoff unlocks something in Trey Turner, right? Maybe he becomes that dynamic athlete that they signed a couple of years ago, who can really change games with his speed and by getting on base. For whatever reason, the last 2 years with the Phillies, he's pulled the ball more often. He has swung at pitches out of the strike zone more often than he did earlier in his career. And maybe leading off gets him back to being that player, that hitter. But on the other hand, I think Rob Thompson comes back to this a lot. They've won a lot of games with Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. They've played to a 93-win pace over the last 3 years. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like there's no real evidence to show you that the lineup doesn't work with Schwarber at the top. I don't know. My whole thing is it doesn't matter. And it's hard to get, I find it's hard to get analytics people and old school scouts to agree on much of anything, but there's pretty much universal agreement on this, that unless you flip the batting order on its ear, like you lose your mind and bat Schwarber, Turner, and Harper 7, 8, and 9, the number of runs that you're going to score won't change much whether they hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 with Alec Boehm batting third, whatever it is. Maybe I'm crazy, and tell me if I am, but I think the way bigger question is, how do the lefties at the bottom of the order, Brandon Marsh in particular, but also Bryson Stott, Max Kepler, how do they handle left-handed pitching? Because if they don't hit lefties, the Phillies as a team are going to be susceptible to left-handed pitching. Am I crazy? Is that not the biggest issue with the lineup?
No, I actually do agree with you. And I think what kind of gets lost in this conversation sometimes is that the leadoff hitter is only guaranteed one time to lead off in the game. So it's a lot of talk about one singular at bat. And there's a lot of more issues that matter with constructing a lineup.
Yeah, no doubt. And as long as, like I said, they're batting, your best hitters are batting at the top, because then they are getting an extra at-bat per game. And, if you could get Harper, Turner, Schwarber to the plate combined 15 times in a game, I like your chances to win that game. But whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4-1-2, whatever you want to do, however you want to order it, it's probably going to be about a handful of runs over the course of a season that it makes a difference with. And I think that the bottom where, you might have a situation where 4 out of 5 guys from the 7 to the 1, if Schwarber bats leadoff, are left-handed, that's much more of a bigger deal. So we'll see how they end up settling on something. If I know Rob Thompson, he will eventually settle on a consistent lineup at the top and stick with it, because he's the guy who, doesn't like to shuffle things around even when guys are in slumps. I think he does want to come to a conclusion on this. I just don't think he's there yet. You kind of get that feeling too?
Yeah, I think he sees like the value of having some sort of consistency, but it's a long season. So I don't think it's imperative that you find that consistency right now. And he still has some runway here to try to play around and see what he thinks is the best lineup.
Okay, let's move on to our last segment. We call this Hit and Run, where we often take a question from a reader or a listener. You can submit a question by email to slauber@inquirer.com or at any of social media accounts that you see listed here, X, Blue Sky, whatever your social media is of choice. But since Lachlan is with me this week, let's end with this. Lachlan, give me one player who stood out to you in spring training. Spring training doesn't mean a whole lot, but sometimes you can read into it. And who stood out to you this spring?
The first person who comes to mind is someone who stuck out to me from the minute I saw him in camp, which is Jose Alvarado. He came in with like brand new physique. He's slimmed down a little bit, and it's paid off. He said he changed his diet over the offseason and put in a lot of work to get to where he is. And it's showing off on the radar gun. He's sitting 100 miles an hour, touching 101 miles an hour, and he didn't allow an earned run over 9 innings over the spring. So it'll be interesting to see if he'll be able to keep that up in the regular season and what he can be if he keeps that up.
That's a great one. I don't think it was possible to watch the Phillies this spring and not be impressed with or have Jose Alvarado jump out at you for all the reasons you just said. I'm going to go with Christopher Sanchez because, as much as he had a breakout year last year, he showed us in spring training that there's still another gear for him before he reaches his ceiling. A couple of years ago, he dialed back his velocity, something that you don't often see in baseball nowadays, in order to achieve better command. Now that his command is more precise, he's adding back that velocity. He's throwing 97 again, putting it where he wants to, and that's the stuff of a top-of-the-rotation starter. I think something interesting that you wrote recently, Sanchez was much more effective at home than on the road last year, and he actually asked Rob Thompson and Caleb Cotham if he could make more spring starts on the road to see if he could figure out an answer to why that was the case. What can you tell us about his desire to do that and maybe practice something that he wasn't as good at last year?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it was his idea to get more reps on the road, and the Phillies were able to get that done for him. I think it just kind of speaks to the type of competitor that he is. He noticed that he had those different splits and wanted to figure out whatever could be at the bottom of that and try to improve on the road in the regular season. The Phillies aren't really sure why. It's kind of a mystery. But one thing that Rob Thompson floated was the extra time that the visiting team starter has to sit while on the road. That's the only major difference between the starting pitcher's routine on an away ballpark versus at Citizens Bank. So that's kind of like the idea behind it, that Sanchez is getting used to that different routine during the spring, so that hopefully when the regular season rolls around, he'll show some improvement on the road at that time.
Yeah, I think another way to maybe help that situation is give him as many starts as you can at home, right? And he's going to get the home opener on Monday at Citizens Bank Park, which is kind of cool. I think it's kind of a hat tip to the year he had last year, and also kind of an indication of how valuable he can be to them again. But of course, he will have to start games on the road this year, and we'll see if they can kind of get to the bottom of that discrepancy. Let's stop it there, because you and I are going to be back together Monday for a special home opener edition of Gameday Central Live. And as I said, Christopher Sanchez will be starting that game. So we'll have more of a chance to talk about him and everything from the weekend in Washington. Every episode of Phillies Extra is available on the Inquirer's YouTube channel or by clicking the Phillies tab on Inquirer.com. We've had some Really great guests over the last several weeks, from Cole Hamels to JT Realmuto and Kyle Schwarber and others. So please check those out if you've missed any of those interviews and those episodes. That'll do it for us this week. Thanks again to Bryson Stott, and as always to our producer, Angelica Irizarry, for putting this all together while Lachlan and I have crisscrossed Florida. Until next week, I'm Scott Lauber. Thanks to everyone for listening, watching, and of course for reading the Philadelphia Inquirer.